Welcome to episode 14 of the Formidable Genealogist Studio, and I am joined here by my friend and colleague, Aimee Rose-Haynes, who is going to tell you a little bit about what she does in the genealogy sphere.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Jen. It's super an honor to be here. So, I do a lot of Cherokee research. That is the tribe that I'm federally enrolled under. I'm a citizen of that Cherokee Nation tribe. So, I try to help people, regardless of what tribe they're in, kind of identify where they belong culturally, reunite them with that heritage, and get them enrolled if that's possible. Each tribe has its own set of rules for enrollment set by their tribal councils. So sometimes it's not always possible, but we always try. But it's been a blessing for me to be able to know how to find these records and how to do this research so those people that are the lost cousins are able to reunite with those cultures.
So that's what we want to talk about today is how you find those records. Because I get so many inquiries from people that are trying to get started in researching their Native American roots. As we all know in the genealogy world, there are a lot of people that have these family stories that they have Cherokee ancestors or they have any type of Native American lines and they struggle to try to prove it. So what are some recommendations you would give people if they have that story in their family on how they get started trying to figure out if it is fact or just lore?
So one of the first things that I always tell people is geography plays a huge role in Native American ancestry. In order to understand where to look, there are 575 federally recognized tribes in the United States. That's a lot of tribes. That is significant amount of tribes to sit there and try to go through one by one to see if your ancestors are there. So I always recommend geography. Where are your family from? So if you were to tell me that your family is from North Carolina back in the 1800s, I'm going to tell you to look at the Cherokee records. If your family was from another state, I'm going to look on a map and see exactly what tribe would have been there at that time period to cut down on that research time, saving you a lot of frustration and, of course, time, because time is important when you're researching. You want to get as much done in as little time as you can so you can move on to the next task.
Hmm. Do you have any resources for figuring out how geography would be related to Native American tribes?
So, Family Search is a free website. And if you go into Google and put Family Search and Native American tribes in the state, usually it's going to pop up the specific tribes associated with that. You can also just put in what Native American tribes were, say, in Ohio. They're going to bring up like the Wyandotte or another tribe that's in that area. So, you're going to have to kind of do a little bit of Googling to figure that out. There's not one specific resource. You can probably find maybe a little bit on the Bureau of Indian Affairs or National Archives, but it's going to be a little bit more digging to try to get it versus Google. You're going to find it a little bit faster.
Hmm. When you were researching your own Cherokee ancestry, what did you start with? What kind of piqued your interest for getting into that?
So I knew a little bit about my heritage. I knew that we were Cherokee, and so I didn't have to use the geography to figure out which tribe I belonged to. I needed to know, like, I wanted to know more. There had to be more records out there for me to learn more about my ancestors. The Native American people were some of the heavily documented people in the whole United States in history. So I wanted to see what was on those records. Were there interviews? Were there some sort of demographics that I may have not have known? Where did they live? What year did they actually get transported from the old world in North Carolina and end up in Indian Territory, now Oklahoma? Like there's so many different records that I was like, there has to be more. They're so documented. I should be able to know more about my people. And so that's what I ended up doing. I started to figure out where those records would be on the Cherokee people and slowly started to find a document here, a document there, this document, this treaty that explained why this happened, and all of these things. And I was able to paint a better picture of my ancestors and what they went through.
Hmm. Were you able to find multiple names for any of your ancestors, or were you just finding on the documents kind of more the Americanized names?
Mostly the Americanized names. There are a lot of Cherokee ancestors that have the Cherokee name and the English name too on a lot of those records, but for the majority of mine, most of mine had the English names.
Okay. Now, I'll just let you take the reins here and talk through some of the resources you can use for this type of research, and feel free to share your screen and just kind of go
Yeah.
off here, go off the rails a little bit, show people exactly what they can find and how.
All right, so Fold 3. Most people know Fold 3 for their military records. They have a vast amount of military records from across the world. But if you go to their homepage and you scroll down just a little bit, you can see Native American. So when you click on that, it's going to bring up all kinds of different documents based on tribes, the Indian American War. There's going to be some photographs, all kinds of different things in this type of documentation. So there's a bunch of different things. Treaties are in here, applications, cards, all kinds of things. So we're going to take a look at this record. So we're going to focus on the Cherokee records because, like I said before, there's 575 federally recognized tribes. That's a lot of tribes to go through. So we're going to talk about the Cherokee. They have more than a dozen different records at your fingertips that you can get your hands on digitally. And there are some that you do have to go boots on the ground, traditional research, like in National Archives. So the ones that are digital, like the Gian Miller roll, this was from the Eastern Band of Cherokee. And then this is going to show you a bunch of different records. I'll get my mouse to work here. You can search these. You can search these by name and other different ways. So we're going to just put in Welch here. Making sure we're human here.
Mhm.
Well, maybe there's no Welches there. There should be. There we go. So we're going to click on the very first one. So you are going to get a little bit of information here. So we're going to get the address of where they lived. The date is in 1906. So Needmore, Oklahoma is where Eva A. Welch had lived. We're also going to get her application number, which we could search at another time, 2808, and her roll number, 2873. So those are all little important things that you could take a look at to further search for more information. So we go to application number 2808. Hit the back button here. I'm going to click Welch off of there. We're going to look 2808. And so we're going to see what pops up for just 2808. A lot of different things are going to pop up because that number was usually kind of used more than once. So you'll have to sort through all of these to see exactly what this is for. So here we have 2808 for Laura Ella Smith. So we're going to keep searching until we find our Eva Welch. So these are types of documents that you usually could have at your access that you don't usually think of. Usually people think of the Dawes Roll right off the bat for anything Native American. Dawes Roll was only for 5 different tribes, but each of the tribes outside of that have other rolls and other documentation for those specific people. And just like with the Cherokee, we didn't have just the Dawes Roll. We had multiple different rolls for different purposes. A lot of the times it was just to enumerate who was in a certain location so they can get them into Indian territory, a removal roll, if you will say. There's also payment schedules. So these people were entitled to payment because they left their land and everything behind to relocate to Indian territory. So they were offered payment or land. And so some of these rolls are to enumerate who was eligible for those payments. So each one of these has different reasons why they were enumerated. So you just get to go through and search by the numbers, search by the names to see who matches up. Like I said, the 2808, those numbers are going to repeat versus if it's a roll number, if it's a card number, different ways. And each roll, the number is going to change. So somebody's roll number on here isn't going to be the same as what it is on another document, say the Dawes roll. They're going to have completely different numbers for each document. So the numbers, if you search by numbers, it's only going to be for that one specific roll.
Mhm.
But you can see there are pages and pages and pages that you can search for. If you wanted to just search under Eva Welch instead, you can search that way. And anything with that name is going to pop up that information. One
Mhm.
caveat to this is there's a lot of people with the same names, the same similar ages, lived in the same areas. I had a case where half of the family was able to enroll under an ancestor, Willie Thompson, and the other half of the same family that descended from Willie Thompson, they weren't able to enroll. They were rejected, and people in this family were confused why half of the cousins got on and half of the cousins didn't get on. So you have to be very mindful of the same name, similar locations, same age kind of issues. In this particular family, they had picked a Willie Thompson who was Native American. There was also one that was a freedman, and there was also one that was white. When I was looking at the documentation, they belonged to the white people. And so I was able to use the birth certificates, the death certificates, the obituaries, and all of those family ties to tie which Willie Thompson is correct. The weird thing about this Willie Thompson is both of their fathers had the exact same name. So that also threw a wrench into things. So I had to use the mother's name, the Willie Thompson's husband's name, and her children and her siblings' name to confirm who was the actually correct one. So they were the cousins that had enrolled were misenrolled. They were enrolled under the Native American one, and it wasn't their ancestor. So that's one of the things that you have to be mindful is making sure that the names and everything, and also look at the people around them, look at their family unit around them to confirm that that is who it is. We
Mhm.
had a really close friend of me last night. She was like, "Hey, I need you to look at these Eastern Band records for me real quick. Somebody is saying that they think they belong to this specific Callie Smith person." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." So we looked it up, and there was two Callie Smiths on the Baker roll, and one of them was rejected and one of them was accepted. So we had to use again those family connections to figure out who exactly was who. So that's just
Mhm.
my little caveat when you're looking at these records. Make sure you're looking at all the documentation and the people around them to confirm that it is your person.
I had a
In
question on these too. Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah.
When we were looking at those results, there's all the OCR stuff that's pulled out, and that it looks really bad. So, so have you found any tips for the OCR in here? Because this is kind of a newer thing, and
So
I'm seeing
I
it's pretty poor.
love the OCR. The OCR
Yeah.
helps make it so much quicker. So when I'm typing up in here a name or a date or whatever, it's pulling anything off of that those words off of the document. So I might miss something that I would have not tried to look for before when I'm targeting just one specific thing. But when
Hmm.
the OCR is trying to pull those words off of every single document that it's scanning. So you do have a little bit of work to do. And with technology, we are still in the baby stages of AI and all of that good stuff. And so it will get tweaked as things go on and it'll be a little more accurate and maybe pinpoint exactly a little bit more of what you're trying to research. It's going to remember what you're trying to research, is my assumption, because that's how AI works. It's remembering the way you research. So
Yeah.
that's going to be a huge help. The OCR is my best friend. I've been able to find things a lot faster now versus when I was trying to research, say, 5 years ago. Is pulling
Yeah.
up things in my family that I didn't even know existed 5 years ago because I didn't know where to look. And the OCR, when I'm doing these searches, it's pulling all these documents for me. Yeah, it might be a little bit more reading, a little more verifying, but I'm a nosy person. I want to see everything anyway.
Right.
Um, but so yeah, Fold3 is the website that I use primarily most often, and then I will use Family Search, and then I use Ancestry for my Native American records. Those are the top three websites that I'm going to use. And actually, if you go to National Archives and you look up the Native American heritage page, it's going to give you a lot of information. But if you scroll down, it's going to tell you basically the same thing. It's going to say Ancestry, Fold3, and Family Search. So it's like same thing that I feel like is best for me when I'm searching. They're confirming the same thing.
Mhm.
This is a website that I do recommend also to kind of familiarize to get more comfortable with because it can kind of tell you where some records are that you may not be able to have access at your fingertips. You might have to go to a location to pull it. So this is going to help you figure out where those records could possibly be hiding, or maybe a record that you didn't even know existed. So I always, always, always recommend to check National Archives for everything.
Hmm.
Um, Back to here, we're going to go to the infamous Dawes roll that everybody knows about. And I love the Dawes roll. I love the Dawes and the Baker, but the Dawes roll because of how much information are in these. So you have the Dawes packets, but you also have a Dawes card, which is a supplementary record that goes with the DOS packet. So everybody who has a DOS packet, they're going to have a DOS card. Everybody who has a DOS card may not have a DOS packet. I've seen a few that didn't have one. But the DOS card is basically a condensed information. It's just facts, names, locations, parents' names, blood quantum. It's just a little concise card of brief information. Whereas the DOS packets are completely full of interviews. The DOTS Commission sat down and were interviewing people to see if they were eligible for enrollment into the tribe. And so they would ask questions. Where are you from? When were you born? Are you married? Who's your spouse? Who are your parents? All of these things. Who are your children? So all of these different things are in these DOS packets. I actually learned that my however many great grandparents was a bigamist, had multiple wives across 3 different states, 4 different states, went to prison for it. So I would have never known that because I don't see a court record. I searched for it, didn't find one. A newspaper article, didn't find one. And I only knew about it because of the DOS packet. That's the only way that
Hmm.
I knew this. So you find out a lot of information on your family by looking for these DOS packets. And these are only for the 5 civilized tribes in Oklahoma. So if you are a tribe that's like maybe from Alaska or North Dakota or somewhere else, you're not going to have a DOS packet. This is only for the 5 civilized tribes in Oklahoma.
Can you define which tribes that encompasses?
Yeah, so you have the Seminole, you have the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Creek, and Chickasaw. I talk about this all the time, and my brain's just
No,
like gone. The
yeah.
Seminole, the Chickasaw, the Cherokee, the Creek, and who am I missing? I'm missing one of them. Who am I missing? Muskogee. That's who I'm
Oh,
missing.
yeah.
Missing the Muskogee.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Baker rolls too. Which tribes does that
So the Baker
encompass?
roll is also for Cherokee, but it's for the Eastern Band
Okay.
Cherokee. So
Okay.
there are 3 federally recognized Cherokee tribes. It's the United Kiowa Band of Cherokee in Oklahoma, the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma, and the Eastern Band that are still in North Carolina.
Okay.
They were able to stay in North Carolina because they had become really good friends with a white man that was there, and Native Americans couldn't own land at that point. So he ended up purchasing a bunch of land, and the Native Americans were able to stay on his land because he owned it. And that's actually the land that they live on still to this day. The tribal enrollment criteria for each of these tribes are a little bit different between all 3 of them. There's blood quantum that takes precedence in 2 of those tribes. Cherokee Nation does not require blood quantum, and I'll talk about that more in just a few minutes. That way you can kind of, when we talk about enrollment processes and how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to show you what a DOS packet actually looks like.
Oh,
Let's see.
yeah.
Let's look up Welch again. All right. So these are going to be like a whole group of images, and this is their entire packet. And so this is kind of like a dust jacket in a way. So it's just kind of like explaining who is in this packet of papers and then some dates, information. 312 is probably their roll number at the top. And then we're going to hit next. And then sometimes the pages look like this, and you just have to hit next again, and it's going to fix it.
Yep.
So it asks, what is your name? Mac Welch. What is your age? She's 29 years old. And again, this is coming from that person. Mac is
Mm-hmm.
answering these questions. So you're getting firsthand information from 1898, 1899, 1900, 1904.
Right.
Through more than 100 years ago, you're getting these firsthand accounts from these people. We don't usually get that in our ancestors. We don't have that
No.
documentation. So it
Hmm.
asks you more about your family and all of this information that you can use to further your research. So maybe you didn't know who Mac's father was. Maybe you didn't have that information. Well, here he's going to name who his family is.
Mm-hmm.
When you continue on, you get forms like this. Not everybody has this form, but some people do have this. And everybody's DOS packet has a little bit different things in it. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's not exactly the same. You might be missing a document versus whatever. But this is more family information. It's going to tell you where he lives again. It's going to tell you who his wife is. It's got his children's name listed there and all of that stuff too that you can add to your family tree that maybe you didn't know before.
Hmm.
And then here is probably his child since they are filed right next to them. And then you have this form here that's going to be an affidavit of them being born. Like I'm attesting that this is my child. They are born on this day. This is the parents, yada, yada, yada. So that is also an extra piece of documentation that you can add to your research. And this is at a time, this is 1900. This is at a time when a lot of places didn't have birth certificates. They
Right.
weren't mandated. So to be able
Hmm.
to have an affidavit of this birth in 1900 is a huge document that a lot of people don't actually have. I've tried to find birth certificates and you get frustrated even in 1920, 1930. Sometimes there's not
Yep.
even a birth certificate.
Yeah, general compliance in Minnesota is like 1915.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you get lucky in some cities that maybe the states didn't mandate it until later on the 1900s. You might be get a little bit lucky and find some like Cuyahoga County, Ohio. There's some that are in 1870s, 1890s. It's just
Hmm.
it's a needle in a haystack, honestly.
Right.
But yeah, that's basically what these documents are. There, sometimes there will be letters in here from witnesses. Maybe the Dawes Commission had some questions of maybe the accuracy of what they were telling them that this is my dad, this is my mom. I think their blood quantum was this, and this is where they were from. And maybe the Dawes Commission think, well, I'm not sure if that's true. So they'll ask a neighbor, a friend, a cousin, hey, can you testify that this information is true? And so they'll have a written letter or another interview in there of saying, yes, this person is who they say they are. I've known them X amount of years and yada, 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 and how they're related, if they're neighbors or friends or coworkers, whatever that case may be. Sometimes there's some documentation where there's a handwritten letter from the applicant. So the person that you're researching would have maybe written a handwritten letter saying, hey, what is the status of my case? Or is it in an appeals process? Or here's some more information. And it's literally a handwritten letter that they sent in and has their signature. Like you could see your
Hmm.
ancestor signature. There's letters in there if somebody was rejected. So if they were rejected, they would usually is a letter included in this packet of why they were rejected. And usually the reasonings are because they can't find the ancestor that they said they're tied to on an earlier roll. So, like I had said, the Cherokee were not just documented on the Dawes roll. There were probably 10, 12, 15 different rolls prior that people were enumerated on earlier, as far as 1817, like 1817. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
1835 is another good roll that a lot of the Cherokee were enumerated on. Those are a little bit harder to read. I have to use the
Uh-huh.
transcribed version of those records because they are very difficult to read. But there's just so many different ways to prove if you are Native American or not versus not just looking at the dolls. My ancestors not on the dolls, but I swear I'm Cherokee, but you might be. You might have to look at an earlier roll. I've had a case where this happened. A client came to me. I know I'm Cherokee, like I was told my whole life. I'm like, yeah, we can see, we can try to prove it. A lot of people say that, and sometimes I find a really cool like link to German or maybe Eastern Europe or Italy or whatever the case may be. But we'll take a look at your lines and we'll see what's going on. No, they weren't on the Dawes roll. So a lot of people are going to say you're not Cherokee if you're not on the Dawes roll, but hold on, they could be on the Chapman roll or a Henderson roll, which
Right.
this person was. Their family pretty
Yeah.
much completely died out by the 1880s, so they weren't even around for the forced removal. They were still back east. So she ended up in an orphanage, and we were able to prove who her family lines were, and she was Cherokee. She was
Mm.
absolutely Cherokee, but she couldn't enroll because her family wasn't able to get in the Dawes roll, and they weren't enumerated on those earlier rolls, which kind of is frustrating for them and for me because I'm looking at a lost cousin and I can't do anything about it. But just
Right.
confirm, like, yeah, your research is right. You are Cherokee.
Hmm.
So there's just, you can just click through the whole entire packet to see what else is in there and be maybe surprised that you find something you didn't know about your family. Like I said, mine was a bigamist. Didn't know that.
Right. How
Um,
many pages are typically in these packets? Is there kind of an average number?
I've seen as few as 4 to 5, and I've seen as many as 20 to 30 pages. It
Wow.
all depends on how much information was needed, if they were able to be proven on an earlier role, like pretty quickly, or if more evidence was needed, if it was an appeals process. So the Dawes roll kind of cut off in 1907. After 1907, there were still some that were in limbo because of appeals and all of those things. So if you were added after that 1907 mark until 1914. So that's kind of where some of those bigger pages will sometimes come in, is more investigative was being needed, or there was more appeals, and so more pages got added in to their file.
Hmm.
And then I will show you what a DOS card looks like. So we're just going to use
Okay.
Welch again because it seems the theme of the day is an easy one.
Right.
All right. So a DOS card is just going to be one card and one card only. That's all it's going to be. And so you're going to have your roll number, and then you're going to have your card number, two separate numbers. Your card number is pretty much follows your family, and your roll card is going to be your individual number, like your ID number or your social security number. So that's your unique individual number. And I kind of didn't pick one that you can read very well. Let me see if we can find a better one. It's got better ink. My computer will work here. There we go. Um, we'll just pull up this rejected one. That'll be good to show you what one looks like that's been rejected too.
Right. Ooh, that one's
This
nice and
one
clear.
is a Choctaw Indians one, so Mississippi Choctaw. A Cherokee card's going to look pretty much the same exact way, and it's going to have the rejected stamped, and it's usually a big red stamp. Like they want to catch your attention. But even if your ancestors were rejected, you're still documented. You still have your information on here, which is your name and your family information on there. And you're going to also have your mom and your dad's name on there and where they lived and if they were still living. So it's going to give you a clue. So the date on here was probably 1900-ish. I can't really see because my picture's like covering the date. But all the
Hmm.
stamps say 1903, so right around there. You can tell that G. West is the father of Welch Smith. He was dead by the time that this was taken. So you're able to get an estimate of when they passed away. So maybe you didn't know when they died, and it's going to narrow your window. Say, okay, well, I know that this person was born in, say, 1892 and between this day, and you know that they were alive at some time between here and here because this document says they died at this day or before. So it's going to help kind
Hmm.
of limit your search in a way, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense in my head, at least.
Yeah.
I'm not great at trying to explain it.
Yeah.
It's going to give you some extra information to strengthen your claim or strengthen your family tree. And let's see if this one has better ink. Yeah, this one has better ink. So here you have that the name of the father is left blank. It says that he's passed away. He was a non-citizen, so that means that he was white. So NONCITZ, that means non-citizen.
Hmm.
It says where she had lived in the district. So that's the district. So it doesn't say Illinois as in the state of Illinois. That's a district in Indian Territory that she lived in. She lived in the Illinois district. It says that her blood is IW, so that means she was intermarried. That means both of her parents were white, and the person that she had married was Native American. So she was enrolling under her spouse. Back then, you were able to enroll your spouse, even if they weren't Native American, as Cherokee, as intermarried. So then all your whole family unit was enrolled, whereas versus today, only the person that is proven to be Native American is able to enroll in that tribe, not the spouse. So for Cherokee. So I'm
Hmm.
enrolled, my children are enrolled, and my husband cannot enroll. Let's see what else we can find on a card. This one's Chickasaw. So you can kind of see basically it's the same information. The ink is kind of faded on here, but it's literally the same information as the Cherokee cards.
Hmm.
My back button does not want to work. Here is a Cherokee Minor card. This is for Laureen Welch, and this just means that she was born after the family had already started the whole process. So she was born after mom and dad and the rest of the siblings in the household had applied. So that's what this means. And like I said, the cutoff date was 1907. So she was able to sneak in there right before that cutoff date. So this one has a lot of easy to read ink. So you have her roll number, you have where she lived, you have her name, how old she was as of March 4th, 1906. She's a female. Her blood quantum, 1330 seconds. Her dad is Mac Welch, which is probably the Mac Welch that I saw in the DOS packet that I showed you just a minute ago. Has that roll number, her mom's information and roll number. And so the blood quantum on there is a little bit of a weird number. You're used to seeing like maybe they were a half or a quarter. She's 13/32. That means that she's getting Native American from both sides of her family tree. And so when that happens, your fractions are going to be simplified. So that's what basically happened here. Her fractions, her blood quantum got simplified into that 13/32.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what the DOS cards look like. I know that Fold 3 is a subscription service, so you have to have a subscription. And there's actually a way to get an index of the DOS cards without having to pay a fee. So on Oklahoma's Historical Society website, they have it where you can search here by first name, last name, only by the tribes, roll number, or a card number. And so you can search and see every single person that is on the DOS cards here and get an index at no cost. So if you're wanting to do the search and the full 3 subscription is a little bit out of your budget, this is another way to go and see that information. And you're not going to see the actual picture of the card. You're just going to get an index of it and what the information is transcribed off the card onto here. And so this is a family unit. So on a card, this is the information that it brought up. So you have Hester Welch, Susan, Jesse, and Thomas, and it's a mom and her children. And it tells you their blood quantums, how old they were, and then if there's any notes that needed to be added. The only thing that you're not going to get on this index are like the parents' information. So that's what you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get by not being able to see the physical card. Ancestry has the DOS cards on there also, so you can search Ancestry to be able to view those as well. They have some of the packets. There's a few of them that I haven't been able to find in there. I don't know if it's a search error that I'm doing, but I always go to the trusty Fold 3. I'm able to pull it up, no issues.
And somebody could go out here, see if there is something to be found on Fold 3, and then
Mhm.
go do a 7-day free
Exactly.
trial and get the
Exactly.
image.
Yes, good tip. I love those free trials.
Yeah.
All right, the Chapman roll is another one of those earlier rolls from 1851. And so I go to Family Search for this one, and here is a picture of the book. If you scroll down, you can see exactly where it is, and the access level is available online. So some of these books on here about the records, they're not available online. You could just see the cover of the book. You have to go boots on the ground to go see it. But access level, this one is available online, so we can view this at home.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. We're just having all the fun today.
I know.
Let's try that again. There
There
we
we
go.
go.
So you can flip through this book and be able to see. Let me see if I can zoom in on this just a little bit so you can kind of see a little bit better of the text. So you're going to get it broken down by states and counties. So this is, again, where geography plays a role. So if you know that your family lived in Polk County, Tennessee, you're going to be able to quickly kind of figure out where your family should be in this book instead of having to go
Mm-hmm.
through the whole entire thing. But here is how it is enumerated. So you are going to get the names, what county they're from, and you're going to get their age and relationships within this household.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is a little bit harder to make confirmations. So these are the names that you have to work with is the traditional names. You get some English names in here too, but for the most part, it's the Cherokee names. So if you don't know the Cherokee
Mm-hmm.
names, this is going to be very difficult. You get lucky sometimes and you get both names.
Yeah.
But as you can tell, it's mostly the Cherokee names.
Mm-hmm. And when you look up Native American research on like the Family Search Wiki, in your experience, have those lists been fairly complete, or do you find a lot of resources outside of the wiki?
For the most part, it's pretty complete. I'll go to
Okay.
the wiki, and I'll actually send that page to some people that are looking for the research.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'll send that page to the person that's trying to do some research so they're able to get those links a little bit faster. Some of the
Hmm.
links sometimes have been broken, but that's very few and far in between. It doesn't happen very often.
That's good.
Yeah. But this is from 1851, and as you can see, they weren't on going to be on a census record in 1850. So when you're trying to figure out more about your ancestors, usually you go to the census record. It's every 10
Right.
years without fail. But with Native Americans, you can't do that because they were not considered US citizens until 1924. So they're usually not on those census records, especially the ones before like 1870s, 1860s, 1850s. They're not on there. If they're on there, that's a red flag that maybe you need to do a little more research on your ancestor. I will say with the Cherokee tribe, there are a lot of my ancestors. They are on the census records in the 1880s, and they are on there in the 1900s, and they're definitely there in the 1920s for sure. So it
Okay.
just depends on which tribe specifically you're looking for. Out west, they're probably not on there until later on in more 1920s, 1930s for sure, 1930s.
Okay.
Um, so that's one of the things that you have to kind of switch your brain off when doing research, when you're trying to research Native American versus somebody who is a white background.
Hmm.
Another record that Family Search has is the index roll for Old Settlers 1896. This is a payment roll. So people on here were given a payment, which it circles right back to this one. There's another copy of this on here. It's a little bit typed. It's a typed version on the cover. That one you aren't able to have access at home, but I'm not sure why this is switching because this is supposed to be another book, but that's okay.
Hmm.
On the Baker Roll, this is my second favorite Native American record. My second favorite. So Dawes is my favorite because of those applications, and the Baker Roll, same reason.
Hmm.
So we're going to search Welch again. So here are all the Welches that were on the Baker. So even if somebody was applying for the Eastern Band of Cherokee on this roll, that was the purpose of this roll. If they were rejected, they still have an application. They still have a rejected application with all of their family information that they have given. Whether that information is accurate or not, we don't know. That's just from their first person. Like that's from them giving that interview and answering those questions. So here's what theirs looks like.
Yay, images.
Yay!
Hmm.
Move this out of the way. And then we're gonna zoom in so you can read here.
Hmm.
So this is her trying to apply for the Eastern Band of Cherokee. And so it's got her name, it's where she lives. If she had children, it would be listed. And so here is pretty much this one. It's not as inclusive as the Dawes. That's why it's my second favorite, but it still has
Right.
good information on here. And it's more information to strengthen your family tree. I'm all about adding as many documents as you can to your family tree to strengthen that ancestor. And the more you have, like the more of a picture you have of your family ancestor.
Right.
And then I need to move this out of the way so I can see what I'm doing here. There we go. And then here is another page to that same one that's giving more information. So you can just kind of build a whole entire like chapter book on each of your Native American ancestors with these documents.
Right.
Honestly, there's so much information here. You could have like a little file per each one of them if you wanted to have that, which is kind of a good
Right.
idea. I should probably do that.
Yeah.
Literally, I could make a whole chapter book
Now,
on.
on your website, you have a research guide on Native American research, right?
Mhm.
A
Yeah.
digital research guide. So I'll have that in the description too, so that people can go check that out. What do you have it priced at?
Right now, I believe it is at $20, but if you use the code speaker, you get a discount
Amazing. So that will give you easy explanations of everything that we've covered here and
and more.
even more,
There, it's
a
on
lot
the
more.
Hall of the Five Civilized Tribes, and it
Yeah,
has
amazing.
more information on the roles, so you can actually see more pictures of some of the other tribe roles and some
Yeah.
of more documentation on where that is, and then how to find these records yourself.
Okay. Awesome. Well, this has been extremely informative because this is absolutely out of my area of expertise with my my background and a lot of my client cases have had very few options for interacting with these type of records, and they are
Yeah.
awesome. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us. And then I will put a link in the description so people could go get that guide. And then she's also available for client research on the subject as well as DNA stuff, which we'll be covering in the next episode. Thanks.
Thank you.